Hey guys, Dr. Bodle here. Now I realize that most of you are aware that when we have hypothyroidism, it can slow down our metabolism and lead to weight gain. And in our effort to get that weight off and start feeling like ourselves again, most of us have tried just about everything, and it seems like nothing works. Now, this makes us feel like weight can be a bit of a mystery. But in reality, a lot of times there's some small adjustments or common sense tweaks that we can make, which can help us to get back on track and see real results. So to help you with that, in today's video, we're going to talk about my patient Jane and the 3 areas that we focused on for her, which wasn't a huge shift from what she was already doing, but made a big difference in how she felt and the weight changes that she was hoping to achieve. So before we get started, just a little bit of background on Jane. Jane is not her real name, but we're going to refer to her as such throughout this video. And Jane's story is she's currently 39 years old, and when she was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, she was 29. She was having fatigue at that time, but she thought it was just due to her work schedule. And when she went in for a routine checkup with her doc, they happened to run TSH. They saw that it was elevated and therefore recommended that she start taking levothyroxine. So at that time, she also had some weight issues, but she didn't really realize that it could have been tied to her thyroid until after she had that visit with her doctor. And her weight had sort of been steadily increasing over the past few years. And the levothyroxine that she started taking actually slowed that down for a period of time. She had been frustrated with those issues before, but her doctor said, that's just what happens when you get closer to your 30s. This is just what happens when you get older. And her and I both agreed that it's kind of tough to be saying this is what happens when you get older when you're only 29. Anyways, she continued on, still having some issues with the fatigue, with the weight, couldn't really make a lot of changes there. And eventually, by the time she turned about 36 or 37, she was having a lot of fluctuations in her TSH, and her doctor decided to run some additional labs and found out that she actually had Hashimoto's. Now, of course, you guys know that a lot of times doctors don't pay attention to this very much, and although he mentioned it to her, it didn't seem like a big deal to Jane, and when she came to me, she wasn't really sure if that was something that was important to her diagnosis or not. But although I always think the diagnosis is something important because we want to match the choices that we're making to the issue at hand, the bigger thing for Jane was that fatigue and weight gain that hadn't been great for her, but she had dealt with it before, had started to get worse, and now the weight seemed to be piling on. And as we said in the intro, just like you guys out there, she was trying just about everything and nothing was really helping her out. So what was the first area that we drew Jane's attention to that eventually helped her to lose some weight? Well, she had done her research before, and she knew that certain foods might not mix well with hypothyroidism, and she had already experimented with removing gluten and dairy from her diet. But the thing that kind of changed her perspective on that is she knew that those foods tended to not react well with her, and she tended to feel better without them, but she was still having them on a somewhat frequent basis. Now, we've talked before about how a lot of people, their main focus when they're trying to lose weight is on the amount of food that they're eating. You don't want to overeat, and it's that whole calories in versus calories out issue. But the other thing that we have to consider is that if there is something, and this doesn't have to be food, it could be anything in our life, that is causing inflammation to our system, inflammation tends to make it very difficult for us to have an efficient metabolism, and therefore makes it very difficult for us to produce energy and burn calories as we would normally hope to. So if there are certain foods that your body doesn't react very well to, even if you're only having a small amount, if you're exposing yourself frequently enough, they're going to continue to kind of irritate and eat away at your system, keeping you in this sort of perpetual low-grade, irritated, inflammatory state, and it's really going to impair your efforts to lose weight overall. So in the past, she had done a couple different cleanses where she was really strict about what she was eating, and during those cleanses, she had eliminated gluten and dairy. During that time, when we asked her about it and when she looked back on it, she realized that, yeah, her energy was better, she had some skin issues that cleared up, and she was able to lose a little bit of weight during that time. However, after she got off the cleanse, after she was feeling a little bit better, some of those things started to sneak back in, and that's common for all of us. And by the time she came in to see me, again, her diet overall was pretty dang good. But she was having a cookie or a piece of toast here or there. She was having a little bit of ice cream a couple of nights per week. And it was this frequency of exposure that we just talked about that was irritating her system and, in my opinion, a big key to what was preventing her from efficiently and consistently losing weight. So our recommendation here was not only for her to be aware of these foods that were causing her issues, but also to do some more food tracking. Now you guys know, and I've said this before, I don't like people to have to do food tracking for forever. But I think in the beginning, it can be a really awesome tool. It allows us to identify a little bit of a baseline, it provides us some data, and I think in the world that we live, where food can be a little confusing, deceptive at times, it gives us that real-time feedback that allows us to then make changes. So if there are these foods that are kind of sneaking in on us, maybe we're not aware of them. And when we start to write things down, it allows us to be able to go back, look for trends, and see if there's any correlation between what we're eating and the symptoms that we're experiencing, or conversely, the healing that we're experiencing. So I simply explained to Jane that having these foods would kind of be like if we had a cut on our arm and we were continually picking at that cut. The foods are the irritant. They're the thing that's picking at us. Well, if we keep picking at that cut, it's never going to heal. And this was an analogy that made a lot of sense to her. So right away, she started tracking, and it was super helpful for her to get some data on what was going on in her life. And that then allowed me to be able to reflect over that information as well. And we could work as a team together to figure out what the best course of action was. The next area that we worked on with Jane was looking at her exercise. And the big issue for her was that she was exercising too aggressively and she wasn't doing enough low-grade exercise. So as I told you about her history, initially when she went on the levothyroxine, that slowed down her weight gain, and she didn't think of it too much until later on when she was diagnosed with the Hashimoto's and the weight gain seemed to be out of control to some degree. But at the same time, we noticed that there had been a change in her work activity. So when she was younger, she was doing a retail job and she was averaging around 8, 9, or 10,000 steps a day. But when she was about 35 or 36, she changed to more of a desk job and was only getting somewhere between 2 to 3 to 4,000 steps per day. So about half. Well, 4 isn't really half of 10, so half or less, you guys know what I mean. Anyways, because of that change in her walking, what she started doing was going to this exercise class where she would go about 2 or 3 times per week. It was about an hour long and it involved a lot of high intensity cardio mixed with a little bit of weights. And I told her that I was very impressed and I thought that sounded great, but it sounded a little bit intense to me. So if you're out there doing something like that and you love it and it's giving you good results, great, keep it up. But I was just suggesting to her that maybe we wanted to look at doing something else. And the reason for that was because in the beginning, when she started doing these classes, it seemed to be all right for her and she tolerated it just fine. But as the years went on, she was having a really tough time recovering. So in the beginning, she was sometimes going 3 times a week. But by the time I met her, she would only go 2 or maybe 1 time because after the workout, she'd be super sore and fatigued. And if she was trying to do multiple workouts in a week, she just couldn't do any of those follow-up workouts. Now, the key here is a principle that we've covered before, which is exercise is pro-inflammatory initially, and that's because it tears down our tissue. Now, long-term, it's very anti-inflammatory, but if we can't tolerate that initial bump in inflammation, then it can cause us to be symptomatic. And even though we feel like or I think a lot of people do feel this way, that we need to be putting effort into our exercise to actually see results, a lot of times we can overdo it and we actually make things worse. Can people with hypothyroidism do these more intense exercises? Absolutely. And again, if it's something that's working for you, awesome. However, Jane just wasn't at that point in her life, and because of the stacking or accumulation of her symptoms, she needed to make a change. So what we did was we cut back on her exercise completely for about 2 to 3 weeks. And I know that that can be scary for a lot of people because if we're already having issues with our weight, the last thing that we want to do is completely go away from our movement, which is the one thing that we've been told has a huge influence on controlling that weight. But we have to manage inflammation as a priority. So we had her stop doing those more intense workouts. And when we started to ease back into it, the thing that we focused on was her walking. Higher intensity exercises can be great, especially if it's something that you can be consistent with. But we can't forget about some of these more mild or low grade approaches to movement because they have an influence on our metabolism as well. And when we look at walking, I think it makes a lot of sense from an evolutionary perspective, and it has a lot of benefits aside from just our traditional view of it of like how many calories are we burning. It can help to regulate our digestion, it helps to stimulate our brain, it can help us to de-stress. And all of these things are super important for us to lose weight. And again, it's not just about that number game that a lot of us end up playing. So as we got Jane back into the swing of things, we had her walking. And it started off with walking just 1 time per day. But over time, we had her increase that to walking 3 times per day. We'd have her walk before work, we'd have her walk on her lunch break after her lunch, and we'd also have her walk in the evening when she had the time for it. And we slowly increased her steps from that 2 to 4,000 back up to that 8 to 9 to 10,000. And not only did she feel like it was something that really helped her to de-stress and improve her sleep, but she noticed that it was really providing a good boost to her metabolism, and she started to see that weight trend in the right direction, especially when combined with some of the nutritional strategies that we talked about in our first point. So the take-home point for Jane was that yes, exercise is important, but if we're not seeing a lot of results right away, that doesn't mean we push harder and really try to kill ourselves by doing way too many workouts or really ratcheting up the intensity. What we want to do is include that as a piece of things if we tolerate it, but we also want to include these low-grade movements, whether it's walking, swimming, stretching, yoga, etc., as a part of our plan. And those things can be just as beneficial, even if it doesn't meet the kind of standard social media approach that a lot of us are used to hearing and being exposed to. But before we move on to the third strategy that we use with Jane, you guys probably have already noticed, but I decided to do a little bit of a change in format. If you like it, give this video a thumbs up. If you're not so sure about it, you're always welcome to leave me a comment and give me some feedback. And of course, if you have any questions about the first 2 strategies or tips that we provided Jane with, just let me know as well. But the last area that we worked on with Jane actually wasn't a health strategy at all. We didn't change anything that she was eating. We didn't change anything with regards to her lifestyle. It was simply helping her to reframe her mindset around weight loss. Now, I think the cases for most, if not all of us, is we always want our weight loss to be quick. We want it to be efficient, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, when I think about weight loss, I often think of that little meme or infographic that we often see where it's the expected path to success and it's just like that straight line, but then the actual route to success, it's all curly and there's pitfalls and these things in our way. And that very much is how weight loss is. It's a tough thing to do. But because Jane had tried so many things and because she had searched a lot of weight loss on social media, she was now being bombarded by a million weight loss recommendations. She had this idea for herself that, it's like all those headlines say, lose 20 pounds in the next 20 days. And she felt like if she wasn't achieving those kinds of results, then she must be doing something wrong and she was failing. And nothing could be further from the truth. It can take a long time for us to gain weight, and therefore it can take us a long time to lose weight. But we want to do it in a consistent manner because when that weight loss is slower and more consistent, we're more likely to be able to maintain it and keep it off. When weight loss is very quick, we're much more likely to have that return. Additionally, there's going to be weeks, and for some people, months, where you lose very little weight at all. And this can be super discouraging. But it doesn't mean that anything is wrong. Just like losing weight isn't just about counting calories, our weight isn't just the number on the scale. It sounds a little bit weird to say that, but there's a lot of factors that go into it, and some are good, some are bad, but that number isn't a good reflection of all of those factors. Think of it this way. Let's say you had a favorite basketball player, and the only stat that you tracked on that basketball player was the amount of points that they scored per game. You'd look in the paper every day. Do people still look in the paper? I look in the paper. But you'd look in the paper every day and you would see that they were scoring 35 or 40 points per game, and you'd say, yeah, that's my guy. They're doing amazing. Love it. Hope they continue. However, if we dig a little bit deeper, maybe that player is shooting the ball 100 times per game, and they're hogging it from other players, and they're not rebounding, they're not getting any steals, they're not contributing to the game in any other way. Are they still the same player that you thought they were? Obviously not. And scoring 40 points isn't as impressive when we're shooting a whole bunch of times within a game. So with our weight, and the thing that we explained to Jane was she needed multiple parameters to track her progress, and she needed to be aware that, again, just because her weight might not change from time to time, that doesn't mean that she's doing anything wrong. And if we see the overall evidence and the overall data is suggesting she's going in the right direction, we just want to stay consistent with things. So the two major things that we had Jane change was that, number one, she could look at the scale if she wanted to, but we also had her starting to measure her waist right at the level of her belly button. Some people will have times where the number on the scale doesn't change, but they're still losing inches, indicating that they are making progress. And so having both of these at our disposal can help provide that encouragement that a lot of us need when things seem to be a little bit stuck. The other thing was that we just let her know life happens, and that can get in the way of how our body is functioning. Especially when we have hypothyroidism, we know that our metabolism doesn't work in the same way as it would be if we didn't have hypothyroidism. And therefore, that system's a little bit more sensitive to being disrupted, and that can then affect the ability for our body to lose weight. So as we work with Jane, she was able to lose 25 pounds over 6 months, but even though we had talked to her about how she needed to shift her mindset, she was already a little frustrated with this number and felt like it should be more. But what I told her was that things looked very consistent for her. If we thought about it in terms of the big picture, 25 pounds, if we could then replicate that and do that in the next 6 months, that's 50 pounds in a year. And that's a massive change for anyone. Plus, we pointed out that she had had some times where she had gotten sick, and she also did a little bit of traveling where she did her best with her nutrition, but anytime you disrupt your sleep cycle and you're not used to what you're eating, that's going to have an impact on things too. So those things play a role in the success and the progress that we're having, and we just need to acknowledge that. There's nothing wrong with it, but it is something that if we're not aware of, we can be a little bit extra hard on ourselves, and that's certainly something that doesn't help us to achieve the goals that we want. So for Jane, even though we had to remind her from time to time, it was about providing her with multiple avenues to track the changes in her body composition, and it was also keeping in mind that life happens, weight loss is not always consistent, and just because we are not seeing all the changes that we want doesn't mean that we're making progress. And we also want to keep in mind those other factors in our life, like our energy, like our sleep, like our stress levels. And if those are improving, then we can rely on that as being a good indicator that our weight will eventually follow as well. But I hope that you liked today's video and enjoyed following along with Jane's journey. She's doing great and continuing to make improvements, and I hope that her story helped you to kind of identify things in your own life that you can work on. And as we said, sometimes it's just those small tweaks that allow us to have some really big changes. If you have any questions about anything that we talked about today, you can leave me a comment. And as I mentioned before, if you like this new style or think there's some things that we could do to improve it, let me know in the comments as well. Also, if you felt like you learned a lot, but feel like you need some additional help and want to work with me one-on-one, send me an email at contact@seattlethyroidhelp.com. My staff will get in touch with you, and the way that we always start the process is we start with a free consultation. I think it's important to meet with people. That way I can make sure that I can help them and that it's a good fit on your end. We want to make sure that not only do our goals align and the outcomes that we want to achieve align, but we just want to make sure that we're a good fit in terms of our personalities, because I think these things are so important that when we have complex health issues, we need to work closely as a team. So that's a big priority for me. If you'd rather do some things on your own, of course, check out any of the other videos on the channel. There's a lot of topics that are covered these days, so I hope there's one that suits what you need. Or you can grab either one of my free downloads, which are linked in the description box. One of which is the food list that I use for a lot of my patients with hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's. Not everyone needs it, but it's a good starting point. And then the other one is an electrolyte mixture that I use for many of my patients who are following low carbohydrate or ketogenic diets, or people who are just chronically stressed or over-exercising. Supporting electrolytes can be a great way to help improve our energy, improve our mood, reduce muscle cramping and dizziness, and I think it's something that a lot of people miss out on. So definitely check that out if that sounds like you. But that's it for today. Thanks you guys, love you guys, hope you're doing well. If you did like this video, thumbs up, subscribe, ring the bell. I post these videos on Thursdays, and that'll let you know when they're available. And if you're looking for more information on natural Hashimoto's and hypothyroid healing tips, you can follow me on Facebook or Instagram. But my name is Dr. Bodle. Thanks again, I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I will see you in the next one.